Welcome to the Mockingcast, the podcast of Mockingbird Ministries, an organization that exists to connect the Christian faith with the realities of everyday life. As always, I'm Scott Jones, your host, and we come to you every Friday to discuss, among other things, the contents of our weekly wrap-up piece, Another Week Ends, which is sort of our Christian cosmopolitan's guide to the contents of the interwebs with a grace-infused flair. In just a few moments, I'll be joined by my usual co-hosts, Sarah Condon and David Zoll, to discuss Another Weekends. But first, I had the privilege at the conference in New York of sitting down and having a conversation with David, my friend and colleague and the director of Mockingbird, and Derek Webb, a musician who has a long and celebrated and interesting career in the Christian music scene and beyond. I give you our conversation with Derek Webb.
I love your democracy.
The democracy stuff,
I like that stuff. But I really think
I would love. The only thing I thought, as I've thought about doing it, that I was like, how would I do it? Is Lenny Bruce. Lenny Bruce is dead. Like, I don't know how I'd do that one, and make that. I don't know what could I bring to that song.
Do you vote, dude?
I do sometimes. My thing with voting is that if what I typically tell people, and this is certainly the way my ethic about voting is, if your conscience will allow you, then by all means vote. But if you're voting defensively to say, I have a moral issue with both candidates, but I want to vote for the lesser of the two evils to block as a defensive vote, what I invite people to do is you are at liberty to not vote. You know what I'm saying? It's more perilous to risk violating your conscience than to not vote.
You would not recommend that in chess.
In chess.
A block is a good move in chess.
In chess it is.
Might be bad.
I've got other friends. I've got a lot of friends who are, for instance, who tend towards third-party candidates, who tend towards independent candidates, and people think they're crazy, and they're like, well, you're throwing your vote away, and I'm like, you know what, when it comes to voting your conscience, be a fool and vote your conscience. If there is an actual candidate who you feel lines up with the way that you see the world, even beyond just how good it would be for a third party candidate to have to break the two party system, which we would probably never do, but to have a real showing for a third party candidate like Ron Paul almost had, and he really that would be such a good thing. We're so locked in. A two party system just feeds on polar extremes. You know what I mean? Mm. So one person, as soon as they hear somebody say something, they immediately say something that's the total opposite, and that becomes the platform. And it's it'd be good for us to have a third, an odd number of candidates. But so I typically tell people, if you want to vote third party and you're only the only thing keeping you from doing it is thinking that you're being stupid and you're throwing your vote away. Throw it away if you're doing it if it means keeping in line with your conscience. Throw your vote away.
So the second to last song you sung, I forget the title. Tell me the title of the song.
Save Your Own Capitol Hill.
Do you think politicians are really more corrupt than the average? Sometimes I think they're less corrupt because they don't have the luxury of a private life.
That's right.
You can screw up a tweet, like a dick pic, if you're Anthony Weiner, and delete it. You can't do that. If your average person can do that.
Right.
Not that I've ever done. No, but But I think almost they become mirrors.
They're so scrutinized.
I think they almost it's the sort of Game of Thrones shame, shame, don't shamed. So in some sense they are almost like mirrors of ourselves. It's where it's almost like a scapegoating thing. Where we kind of put our secret shame on them.
Sure. They're the crosses upon which we hang our sin to be justified.
Yeah.
I don't disagree with that.
Jesus for president.
Yeah. I don't disagree with that. The only thing is I think that they're probably just better. I think they just have to bury it deeper.
That's what somebody asked Trump. They were like, is Ted Cruz the dirtiest politician you've ever seen? Trump goes, oh, no, not the dirtiest. The dirty ones are smart. They don't get caught. He's the most dishonest, but he's not smart. The smart ones get away with
That's
it.
what I'm talking about. That's what I mean.
Lying Ted.
Yeah. And so, I mean, I think, here's my thing, is I'm suspicious of anybody, like, I mean, this is like, it's a cliche, but like Mr. Smith does not get to Washington anymore. Like, I just do not believe that. Like, in order to have a voice in a race for power, you have to, just specifically in American politics, you just don't get there unless you have resources that can only be provided by people who are going to come calling at some point. Like, they're all getting in all your pockets. And there's kind of no way around that. Like, I mean, unfortunately, I've always said, unless you're independently wealthy, you could fund your own campaign.
Yeah, gosh, Derek. What?
Unfortunately, the one character who has done that and is doing it smashingly right now is somebody who I think probably has no business running for office. But
Bernie Sanders has raised more money than any candidate. I mean, so maybe he is.
Well,
maybe he is the populist in the sense of like he's actually raising. Do you see a parallel to that, like in the music industry, like where people, okay, I'm going to circumvent like the sort of the music industrial complex,
right?
And go directly to the
right. I think that the business as it is today, the head of the sales curve is an anomaly to get into. Like even the executives, there used to be a decade ago, 15, 20 years ago, there was a dollar amount. And if you spent that dollar amount, you could put an artist, any artist, into the head of the sales curve. You could. And you could sell millions of records. And it was just a series of things you had to do, and it was a dollar amount on it. Now
I would kill if somebody would pay, because I could do like 4 karaoke songs. If there was a dollar amount,
I'm really not joking though.
Dude, the only thing I could be the best rock star. The only thing I'm missing, like you see what I'm wearing, I feel like I have the panache, I have some eccentricity. The only thing I'm missing is talent. I feel like, but back in those days, that wasn't a problem.
That's exactly right. That didn't used to matter. And Milli Vanilli is a terrible example because they're the scapegoats, and everybody does what they got caught doing. But what I'm saying is like that used to be true. Talent was not required, but now the way the music business works, man, it's all democratic. And it's just the Wild West out there. So, like, you really...
Wild West.
Well, see, a perfect example. And nowadays, like, all you can really do is you give it your best shot. And then if the impossible happens and you do wind up, the perfect storm of things happen for you, and something like Taylor Swift, or there's a handful of artists you could name. There's only a few now.
Adele.
I mean, these are the anomalies,
the
man.
monoculture.
But when
you love the players,
but
I love the game. No, you hate the players. I like that song though.
No, well, the thing is, like, but when it happens, then you can throw all the money and all the things behind it, but you can't create the opportunity the way you used to be able to.
People are more cynical about it.
Yeah, I mean, Clive Davis used to be able to say, "Oh, here's Britney Spears. Watch me go make her number one. Like, watch me make her into a giant global pop star," and then he would do it. And now there just is not a dollar amount. Like there is not that path anymore. It's like if certain things out of your control happen, you can throw millions of dollars after it, and you can feed the fire, you can fan the flame, but you can't do it like you could. We are like in a post rock star culture now.
What is your path? Like as a musician, what's your path? Like when you think about like, okay, musically, like you said tonight that like I promise an album's coming out this year. Like what motivates that? Like in the way the music industry is today, what drives your kind of desire to do that, and like what would success look like?
For me at this point, and I've been this way for a long time. I've said many times that like if I sold 500,000 records next year, my career would be over. I'd be miserable. Like for me, the thing I've learned, and I've had the luxury of having been in a band for 10 years before my solo career started, that did pretty well. We didn't sell millions and millions of records, but we sold in total we sold a million records. But we weren't huge, but we were big enough for me to get a sense of what it takes to get there and to stay there, and what you give up along the way to have that. And so because what happens is you get into the platform building business and you get into the platform repair business, and you tell yourself you're going to get up there and you're going to say something important. You're going to do that thing you got into it to do. You're going to get up there and you're going to say something, and it's going to be this crazy disruption. And you tell yourself that's what you're going to do. And that's the reason you have the platform, right? But then what happens is over time, once you have, if it works, if you succeed at it, then what happens is all of a sudden there winds up being a lot of like people's jobs and a lot of lives that are tied up in that platform staying, right? Like that continuing to work. And all of a sudden all your time goes into securing and building. And then you tell yourself like, but if it got a little higher, think of what I could do. Like I'm going to get up on that thing and but like I have so many friends who were successful. They had like some real ambition to really change things and disrupt things and say important things and whatever. And then they suddenly had a little success. The platform started to grow, and then they start to tell themselves that story of, but I got to keep my platform secure because one day I'm going to get on. I'm going to say something. And they have these amazing.
You're saying at some point you wake up and you're like, I'm doing like Amway or AdCare.
Yes, that's right.
You
have these amazing.
And I got the market, I got the fans, I got the thing. And someday you're like, I'm just managing. I forgot why I'm doing it. Right. I'm just managing the.
Yeah. Your bio is the truest thing about you. Like all of a sudden you have this amazing platform that you will never ascend. The job of an artist, and the way I've always talked about the artist job description is to look at the world and tell us what you see. Mm-hmm. Look at the world and describe it. That's an artist's job. Because it implies all the right things. Like you have a particular grid through which you're looking at the world. You have a particular perspective on that. That's what I want to hear. And it's taken me a couple of years to figure out how to describe the world as I see it at this point in my life. Mm-hmm. After like a couple of really hard years, it's hard to figure out I haven't been blocked. I just don't know how to describe the world as I look at it.
Why not?
Because the older you get and the things you go through, it becomes harder and harder to you don't want to be Joni Mitchell. You want to save some things back for yourself. You want to protect things that need protecting. So it gets tricky because I've always been like a lay it all out there kind of guy, and I'm not a poet. I'm very didactic in the way that I write, but the way that great writers do it, like Dylan, he was revealing everything, but nobody knew it because it was so dense. The poetry of it was so dense and like so layered. It was like Inception. Like you couldn't possibly figure out what he was talking about, but he was telling you everything. It's all there. You just don't have the key ring to figure out how to decode the whole thing. And so that's never really been my strong suit. So it's taking me longer to figure out how to talk about the things that are important to me right now, the world as I see it, and do it in a way that's both healthy and protective.
Healthy and protective.
So it's like, so the stakes get high and it just takes a while. But I'll tell you, like I'm terrified of the songs that I'm writing right now. Like the way that I always do it is I do not, and I always encourage my friends, like in the creative moments where it's literally like those first moments where it's just pen to paper. Don't try to not be preoccupied with what are people going to think, what's the label going to think, what's the radio going to think, what are my fans going to think, what's everybody. Just get it down first. Like let that be a problem you have to deal with later, but get the songs written first. Don't pre-filter them. Like
shitty first draft kind of Anne Lamott stuff.
I mean a little bit like. Because I just have friends who like have told me about like they'll play me some song that's on their record. And they're like, "Well, man, this song started as this kind of song, and here's what I was going to say, and this was a line from it." And I was like, "I wish I could hear that song. That sounds amazing." So, yeah, but I knew that like there's no way the label would have released the record with that song on it, and I knew there's no way I could get away with that, so I didn't write. I had to change it all up, and I'm like, "But why? Like, if not in art, where? Where can we take chances like that? Where is that valued?" And so that's for me. I've always I push the pressure into the future of like, I'm going to push through the moment, push through my fear of what's somebody going to think, what's the fallout going to be, what's the risk, what is the risk that I'm taking by writing this lyric? I push that into the future to get the lyric written. And then I'm like, what have I done? You know what I'm saying? Like, and then I have to deal with it because then once I've written the song, I'm like, well, I'm going to sing it. I'm going to record it and I'm in trouble now. And I've gotten in trouble many times in my career as a result. But which is to say, I'm terrified of the songs I'm writing.
Oh, wow!
Because I'm going to record them and I'm going to sing them, and I'm fearful.
What's this style going to be? What's the palette?
Here's all I can tell you. Yes, I mean it's something I've never done, and this is what I was going to tell you is like my only rule And if you go back through all my records, this proves out, especially even with I Was Wrong, with the new record. Say what you will about it. And I will never make a record like that again.
I love that record.
I don't regret it, but I would not make that record today, and I will never make a record like that again.
Can we talk about the elephant in the room right now?
So now we're done. Yes.
So David's wife is pregnant again. So you look at his genes. Could he transition to mom genes in the next 3 years? They're not terrible. But I mean, no, in all seriousness, I mean, so you had a rough.
Scott's wearing a scoop neck as we speak.
I bought this.
Just want to say
for
that
David's disco night. When I saw that cat T-shirt,
causing me to stumble.
I went to Forever 21 and bought this. I didn't know they had men's clothes.
Uh-huh.
It's funny because
do they?
I'm not sure that
they do now.
I mean,
it's funny because
men can put the clothes on that they sell there.
No,
I think you've done.
This is an M. It's an M. It's an M. This is in the men's section.
Okay.
Yeah, my wife and I might open a store called Forever 39. It's all just like couches, yoga pants, and wine. That's Forever 29, rather. Forever 29. But
sure.
it's 39-year-olds, but Forever 29.
Yeah.
So like you've had like a rough year personally.
Yeah.
But the music you did was not victorious Christian life, right? It was not. So I had this friend, right, who was in campus ministry, and his middle name was A. So like I don't know. Let's just say his name was Ford A. McKinley. Actually, I'm getting this because I listen to this podcast, this Jewish podcast, Unorthodox, and they said that like they're talking about Merrick Garland, the Supreme Court appointee. They're like, how does a Jewish guy get named like Merrick Garland? And they were all trying to think of their Gentile name. So one guy's like, well, what I would do is come up with like something first. Your first name is something a Jew generally wouldn't buy. Economy car, like shoddy economy car. And then a really outdoorsy place you're not going to find many Jews. So I would be Ford McKinley. So I'll make up my Ford A. McKinley.
It's Ford A. McKinley.
So
yep.
just to
friend of yours.
Yeah, Ford A. McKinley.
Campus ministry.
But he would say, my name is Ford A. McKinley. And the A stands for adulterer. And everybody would go, and then he'd go, because I've been unfaithful to my God. And everybody would go, whew. We thought you were talking about sex. So on some level, like, you write music that talks about your own dependence. Like, you don't write music that's sort of like, rah, rah, I'm a superstar. I'm believing more. I'm getting parking spaces onward and upward. I'm praying for parking. But then, do people treat you differently now because you're in a posture where you actually have to ask for grace, or it's implied that you need to? Whereas before, it's like, we like when you're singing about grace. We just don't like you to need it.
That's really well said. Yeah. You know what? I don't really know. And maybe I'm going to find out pretty soon, because like, I haven't put a record out in a couple of years, and I've been kind of, living underground running Noise Trade, which is the company I founded about 8 years ago. And it just coincided with, there were a handful of things all happening at once. And one of those things was, I was like, after the I Was Wrong record, I was like, I'm like at the 10-year mark, the 11-year mark in my career as a solo artist. And like Noise Trade, I felt was a better fit for me professionally at that point, because I have so much more ambition for the careers of my friends and for the health of the independent music market than I do for my music career at that moment. So there was just an opportunity. Our board had asked me before what it would take for me to step in and play a leadership role in the company. And I was like, I've got my day job that I love, and I can't imagine ever having the time to learn how to, let alone run a company. But it was just that perfect moment where I was like, I could probably take a break. I could probably use a year or two off, and not have to go out and endure the exposure of being out in front of all these people and not knowing, where my footing is. And so I've taken a couple of years off, and it's been amazing. It's great things happening for our little company. But I don't really know. But what I can tell you is, it is interesting that, I've been singing songs for more than 10 years that confess things worse than I've done in my life, that, as it turns out, are not false advertising. And so I don't really know why that's a shock to anybody.
and like, full disclosure, I've gone through some rough passages, and those songs were, thank you. They were incredibly comforting.
Well, that's I mean, reciprocating vulnerability for vulnerability is a generous thing, and I appreciate it. And so it's like, for me, I think people are kind of bummed out when it turns out that it wasn't false advertising. Like, that wasn't a metaphor. I was being serious. I really meant all that. And I think you're right. People are okay with you saying it, but not okay with you actually really needing it.
Yeah.
Do you still go to church?
No.
Is that conscious? It's sort of like, hey, this is a sabbatical from.
Yeah. I mean, I think that you go through seasons where it can be healthy to deconstruct and reconstruct things. And I think I'm just on the precipice of the reconstruction period right now. But for me, it's been a very good and very healthy thing to, especially like the irony is that, if church, the idea of church, if it's being done right, it should feel more like an AA meeting than an Amway convention, right?
Yeah.
But that's not how most churches feel. Like, even the guy in the front's like, my name is so-and-so and I'm a total wreck, and come with me and let's all go get healed together or whatever. That's not how it feels. That's not typically what you find. And for me, I have through the last year or two that I've had, the people who have really come up around me and the people who have really showed up and really, I mean, I've had an almost 100% friend turnover in the last 18 months. And the people who I have now are people who I found in bars and people who I found in, like, people who, it's just funny how the friends you make when the first thing that people learn about you is the worst things are the best friends you can find. And that's not typically how friends are made. That's not typically how church community works. That's not typically how really any friendships work. I'm not trying to blame the church for that. I'm saying most friendships, you meet somebody, you have something in common, you have friends in common, or you have a common interest, but it's good things. It's based on good things. The people who you meet and the first things you learn about each other, like in people you meet in like certain kinds of groups and certain kinds of, are like, when the first thing, and maybe the only thing for a long time that somebody knows about you is the worst thing about you, it's a pretty amazing thing to then get to know those people, and then you're kind of delighted and surprised when you find out good things about them.
There's this thing,
because you know those people will never leave you, and I thought that about other people, and that didn't turn out to be true. And I'm not saying I made that easy, but I'm just saying, like, I'm very grateful for the people who I have, who, my community of friends now. Those people are just not congregated in churches; they're mostly congregated elsewhere.
There's a thing called Creative Mornings. Like, it's I don't know if you ever, like, it started in New York where they would have once a month, like a kind of TED Talk kind of thing for creatives. So your name tags, though, it'd be like Scott, and then you'd have to also answer a question, like, what would you do if you weren't afraid? So you'd be like, Scott, I'd start that coffee shop, or
right,
Joanne, I would talk to my estranged relative. So it's funny because I'll be, this is full disclosure because you've been incredibly vulnerable. Yeah. So this is so insane, and this is testimony to the, like, so I saw my name tag and it said attendee, and I was like, wait, I think I'm like a speaker, I think I'm a staff person, I think about it. So and I thought, like, gosh, I guess I'm not that significant. Like, so, but then I thought my wife has the attendee thing and she's delightfully significant. So I was like, okay. So I thought, like, what would I want my name to be? So I was like, neurotic was the first thing I put on my name tag, because I'm neurotic, because only a neurotic person would think this about your name tag. So then I thought, like, it's just the Luther thing, pride about Jedi. Well, because I think I'm insightful about things. So I'm a neurotic Jedi. So then somebody said to me, neurotic Jedi. I'd love to know what that would be in the Star Wars universe. I said, well, I think every Jedi is like the balance of the Force.
Everyone's preoccupied with it.
Yeah, if they had Purell, it would have been, all the Jedi before they touched their lightsabers. Who touched Yoda's lightsaber? Purell, I need. But yeah, I think that would. But how great would it be if we actually, if we had to, like, disclose things like that on some level that. So religiously, okay, it's really interesting. People, like, today sociologically talk about the nuns, right? The people that are non-affiliated, but then. There's another. Oh, shoot. Okay. Can I just ask one question, then we'll bag it?
Someone's waiting for me.
Oh, just one more.
Yeah.
None or John. You just need to walk out. I can just. This is my last question.
Here, hold on.
So, then there's been some sociological work on the dones, and these are people that still would ascribe to faith in like God or Christ or things like that. But they're just like, I'm done with the church. I'm not. I could still say the Nicene Creed. You know,
right.
So like, are you kind of? You don't strike me as a nun. Like you're not like I'm not. But are you for a season in the dun?
See, the thing about it for me is that it's all part of that deconstructive and reconstructive kind of process for me. Is like I'm such a I'm the opposite of the typical artist personality. I'm the opposite. Most artists are like abstract and poetic. And
have you ever taken the Enneagram?
Sure, I'm a 1 with a 9.
Oh wow,
I'm a 1. I'm a full 1.
Wow, that's great, dude. Yeah. That's a great.
Well, and so I am like most of my artist friends are again like abstract, poetic. You know, they can tell you how they feel, but not any detail. I am hyper detail, rational, analytical. Hyper analytical.
David's a 2, so he'll meet your need if he needs.
Well, I'm a 1, and so, or so I'm told. I don't know. I took the test. My friends hyperanalyze it, but and so for me, it's like the last time I put any real thought into the construction of my kind of theological grid, I don't know that I would allow myself Jesus without the church. I don't think I would allow myself that because I don't really see a version of Christianity that does allow for that. Because he himself said, like, we're diverse members of one body, not any one person. Like, I've never believed that you could just go up on the mountaintop and have the sunset and you just do church up there all by yourself. I don't think that's like, I've never been able to say, I'm going to just cherry pick and make my own thing out of this. As I look at the whole counsel of the Bible over time, it's like you're kind of all in or you're not in. And so for me, like, I don't know that I could really do that. I don't know that at least in the last time that I thought real hard about that, there was not a version of it that would allow me Jesus without the church. And so is there a season where maybe I'm having to say no to both for a minute? Maybe. And I think if I come back to it, I'm going to have both. I don't think there's a version. I just don't. So it's like I have a very high view of Scripture. I have a very high view of I have a very conservative theological ethic when I have it. And
that is so.
That's a great answer.
Articulate, authentic, and self-aware.
That's just the only answer I have right now.
Hey man, thanks for this. I feel like it's like such an abrupt ending to our conversation, but the night goes on, and we're in New York.
That's true. We
are in New York.
Hey, we have other things to do, right?
We got to do things. We got to have a little fun.
We got disco to get to.
But thank you so much just for playing and for your time and just for
pleasure.
Like I feel like I know you better than I do.
It's a pleasure. No. Well, I feel the same.
Is all mine.
I feel the same.
Thanks.
Sometimes, man, you find a song and you hear it one way and you miss it. You miss what's going on in there. And that's why great pop music is, great pop music writers, essentially what they're doing is they're just building great Trojan horses. And boys, this is one of those songs for me that by one of my favorite songwriters, and when it came out probably in the 80s, it just, I sang it, I knew every word, but I didn't know one word of it, and I love this song. And so, see if you can recognize this one. I'm not a woman, I'm not a man, I am something that you'll never understand. I'll never beat you, I'll never lie.
Well, we are here once again on a Friday recording with Sarah Condon in Texas.
Hey.
And David Zoll in Virginia.
Hey, guys.
Sarah, how is Houston? Like, there's like biblical floods there.
Yeah, a lot of things are underwater, a lot of water in houses. Cleanup has started in some places. You know, as with any natural disaster, it's hardest on the poor. So those are really the people we're worried about.
Yeah, David, how are any natural disasters in Virginia or no? Things are...
No, it's comically beautiful here right now.
Good.
There is pollen here.
Ooh.
Lots of it.
Yeah, we've been dealing with that too.
Yeah, that's rough.
Oh, so fast.
And it's hey man, this the Claritin.
You got to take allergy meds.
Opportunity.
Yeah.
People are popping Claritin like Tic Tacs up here. Right? So I feel like wow. I mean, Prince. I was surprised at how emotionally. Like this morning, I woke up really early at 5:30. I downloaded a bunch of Prince music and I listened to Purple Rain and I wept. I was sitting there like I really yeah. I mean that it's this. Sometimes sadly you don't know how much someone means until they're gone. Which is even John Kasich was talking about. And there's not like a whiter. Like more Midwestern, and this is no dispersion name or whatever, but I'm saying it's not what you naturally picture this older guy as a Prince fan, but he was like just really broken up over the fact that he had never seen Prince live, as I haven't.
Yeah, neither had I. It's apparently live he was an absolute revelation, though, in keeping with his whole persona, it was fairly unpredictable. I met a kid. Talk about a super white kid when I was working as a youth minister who lived in Hartford, and he was so obsessed with Prince that he learned how to play. He could play every single instrument. He learned each instrument only according so that he could reproduce Prince songs. And so he could play like incredible electric piano, he could play amazing guitar, incredibly funky bass, yet he looked like, very straight-laced little preppy kid in West Hartford. But it revealed something.
Were you the little preppy kid, David?
Something was going on in this guy, and it made me very interested in wanting to get to know him better.
Mm.
Yeah, I watched an interview yesterday with Prince. I mean, it was not hard to find. It was just kind of watching cable news. And he said that at one point as a teenager, he opened the phone book and looked through the entire phone book, like the yellow, and couldn't find a single thing that he wanted to do that interested him. So he just like perfected his craft and, became this really a virtuoso. I mean, like, it's interesting too, like they were talking about how in the 80s, the early 80s, with like Tipper Gore and somebody else, they had this parental explicit lyric kind of thing. And Prince was like one of the hits on their depraved list. And so to hear President Obama yesterday talk, like we lost a national treasure, it's just amazing how, what do they say? Every sinner has a future, every saint has a past. So it puts everybody's stories like in relief.
He was the sort of guy that, a lot of, it's a little bit like with Michael Jackson. I can't help but feel that everyone's coming out of the woodwork and they love one record from the 80s. And he was producing enormous amounts of material in the last decade, like, releasing 3 albums at a time at Target that no one would listen to. And so I always feel it's a little disingenuous because what have you done for me lately kind of thing. And yet he was on New Girl.
Like when somebody has like kind of screwed the family and they come back to a banquet and you have to kind of eat with them. And like you sort of stayed there at the farm and been really loyal as a worker. And then somebody kind of comes in and everybody celebrates them. Like they've been, I don't know. There's a story like that somewhere.
Yeah,
I don't know where it is, but
it sounds familiar. I think Better Call Saul.
Yep. Which I have not watched,
I
by the
thought
way.
David's piece on Mockingbird was wonderful. I mean, I'm not somebody that has listened to a lot of Prince, but you sort of talked in a really personal way about how influential he's been and how and why you've appreciated him. It's a great piece. What I really loved was towards the beginning you said, but today, I think it was towards the end, but today I don't want a silver lining. I just want to listen to a sad song. And it was funny because I was watching my newsfeed yesterday and there were so many people that wrote, it was weird. And I've never seen people write this about a celebrity. Well, I'm not going to be sad about this. I'm just going to be thankful. And I was like,
Right.
Be sad. Like, this is a big deal for a lot of people. Like, be sad. So, yeah, I thought it was a great piece, David.
Well, thank you. Because I didn't want to act like I was a super fan. I was always reserving Prince, to be honest with you, to like get really into one day. He was one of these people that I knew if you can't, you have to kind of go all in with his music.
Yeah.
You know, you can't. There's so much there, and that's just the way I digest music. So he'd always been sort of this thing on the horizon, and I felt like a phase was coming on a couple years ago. I remember told my wife, but it is interesting how like everything has got to have a silver lining, and you know, heroes never die; they just sort of become bigger or something. The Twitter feed is both filled with some really funny memes about Prince, because he photographed well.
Yeah,
There are some really amazing photographs of Prince through the ages, but there's also this hero worship that. Same thing happened when Michael Jackson died. Though I've always heard that even, I think Prince introduced someone at the Golden Globes, the Oscars a couple years ago, and you could see all of the celebrities, like these A-list celebrities, go completely red, like, and stop speaking. He was he was not only the artist, he was the superstar till the end, and kind of no one could touch him. Even when he appeared on New Girl. Did you see that, Sarah?
No.
Did you watch
No,
New Girl?
I do, but I didn't see that.
He was in 2 episodes of New Girl, and he was great. He was really good, because remember, Prince was in a couple films.
Oh, yeah.
Not just Purple Rain, but Under the Cherry Moon, which was not very good. But Purple Rain was kind of amazing. Purple Rain's like a proto Tyler Perry film. That's with incredible music, because it's so melodramatic and so many crazy things happen in it. And it shifts from like weird comedy to like gang banging to sort of this androgynous glam rocker on stage. I mean, he was definitely, you look at him and Michael Jackson, and one of the really transgressive things about them is how much they were playing with gender. I know that's all anyone ever, it's the only lens through which people can see anything these days, but he was certainly doing it. I mean, way before it was acceptable, especially in the black community.
Well, it's interesting too. Your dad said something at the conference last weekend about we go to movies to release our inner child, this split off from ourself, person that's full of wonder, and probably through wounding and shaming gets repressed, and sometimes it gets let out. And I think for many people, Prince was like one of those people. I mean, I was reading like the review that Stephen Holt wrote in 1981 when he first saw Prince in New York. He says, wearing black bikini briefs, fringed high heel boots, and black thigh-high stockings, he is sexual license incarnate. My wife says that about me sometimes, but not with the outfit. But Prince is such a charismatic performer that his stylized salaciousness doesn't offend.
Yeah.
With his sassy grace and precocious musicality, he is heir to the defiant rock and roll tradition of Elvis Presley, Mick Jagger, and Jimi Hendrix.
And he looked like Little Richard too.
He did.
That's funny. I remember reading some interview in the mid 90s with Claudia Schiffer, like the supermodel at that time. They're saying like, if any celebrity, like who would you want to get with? And she said, she was like a pause, and she's like, no question, be Prince.
That's amazing.
And like Prince is, like he's like 5'5", and she's like 6'1". She's like, hands down, no question asked. I still wish that Prince had said yes to duetting with Michael Jackson for the song "Bad," but that will be one of the great lost treasures of our time.
He also inspired one of the best Dave Chappelle skits, where basically Charlie Murphy is like, it's like this. He's reminiscing on the '80s and crazy things they did. So we're in this club dancing, and Prince invites us all back, with the band. And we play basketball with him. And he's like, don't you guys have uniforms? I don't know where you bought those shirts. It certainly wasn't in the men's department. And then Prince is in the band, the Revolution, they beat these guys so bad. And then after, he served us pancakes. Just like, here, Charlie Murphy, here's your pancake. It was so great.
It's an incredible skit.
Well, may he rest in peace. lighter note, I feel like the Babylonian Bee, they need to give us royalties, or we them, or something, because they're becoming like a running appearance in the podcast on our website. They are, and Sarah, you pointed us to something this week that you thought was hilarious.
Yeah, and we have to start saying the Babylon Bee, and maybe they'll start giving us royalties. Because I got saying
Babylon.
Yeah. So it's this piece, Youth Pastor Forgets What His Hebrew Tattoo Means. And I'm just going to read a little bit of, because it's just it's short. It's so good. So Seattle, Washington, local youth pastor Bryce Lepresti blew a perfect chance to give a reason for the hope within him Tuesday when his neighbor finally inquired what his tattoo means. Dude, thank you so much for asking, Lepresti reportedly replied, peering down at his forearm. It's the Hebrew word for... So then there's like his girlfriend says like how bad it was, and she's like, it was a divine appointment gone horribly wrong. But my favorite line of the whole thing is, so in a press release Wednesday, Lepresti commented on the squandered opportunity. It was a moment missional dreams are made of. There I stood about to go all incarnational, and I just froze. Like, if that's not the best use of the word incarnational that I've read recently, like, I don't know what is, like, I tried to go all incarnational. I loved this piece. I mean, I loved it for this oddly personal reason. My roommate at Ole Miss was the Japanese professor on campus, and who I loved. And she told me that the first day of class every year, she would go through the class because she had all these like kids, who grew up in the South who were into Japanese. Like, this was their moment. They were finally getting to take it. And a lot of them had Japanese tattoos. So the first day of class, she would go through and tell them that what they thought said like love or strength actually said idiot. So I just thought this was funny for so many different reasons.
I had a buddy that got a Hebrew tattoo once, and he didn't go to seminary, or maybe it hadn't at the time. And I think it was Shalom or something. But I was like, dude, the vowel pointing's wrong, right? He's like, no, yeah. I was like, all right. I mean, no one will really know unless you go to Israel, but it's wrong. But,
I mean that's so funny, and I mean, I wonder if there's just the tattoo parlors are filled with pranksters on this level.
Yeah.
Like I could imagine them wanting to punk some of these people pretty bad. But the Babylon Bee, they nailed it again this week with that other headline. Gridlock ensues as God tells two men to date the same girl. I think it's like. And like, having done the youth ministry thing and heard so many times, God used as sort of like a wingman.
Right.
I had a buddy that called me. He's like, well, it's in college. He's like, well, the Lord
not just from guys. Girls use it too as usually a way out.
Right. It's the breakup. Yeah, but that's what happened to my buddy. He's like, well, the Lord doesn't find me attractive. I was like, what do you mean? Well, Melissa broke up with me, and she said we started dating a few weeks because the Lord led her to me. So then she broke up with me. So my only conclusion is the Lord doesn't find me attractive anymore. Because, by the way, Sarah, we let something slip. Your roommate in college was the Japanese professor?
Yeah. When I was 19 years old, my roommate in college was a 40-something Japanese woman. Yeah, who I'm still friends with. I love her so much. But
another layer to the onion.
I want to write your biography.
I partied hard at Ole Miss.
So badly.
It was just like a river of sake.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Plum wine mostly, if we're being honest. Yeah. But yeah.
Wow, that is so cool.
My mom found her for me, which I was also totally okay with. Yeah, it was. Yeah, I was living on the edge at Ole Miss. Yeah, I thought this was funny because I think like the hardest job ever is youth ministry, primarily because there seems to be this fixation for some people who are youth pastors that they have to look like the kids. And so like every 6 months, their look has to like completely change. Like when I was a kid in youth program, like all the big, like charismatic youth pastors had like frosted tips in their hair. Like all the guys had like this weird, oddly, unnaturally blonde hair.
Oh man, I confess to having frosted tips.
Did you?
It was very,
David, you kind of still have frosted tips, dude.
In a different way.
Yeah, it's age now.
Gray.
We're gonna need a picture of that, David.
It was about a 2-month thing after a breakup, and I was really I went to some place in Washington and said, just change me. Just make me different. I can't stand myself right now, and I need some distraction. And they this guy somehow talked me into going nuts on my eyebrows. I've got quite, I'm not lacking in the eyebrow department, and, he made it look, I've never heard the end of it from some people that met me during that phase. In fact, I was being interviewed to be a youth minister at where I was being interviewed. Frosted Tips were very much liability. And one of the questions, I could tell everyone known that I'd gone to various schools, and they kind of expected something from me. And about 3/4 of the way through the interview, someone just said, "Okay, I just got to stop. What's with Frosted Tips?" And I had to explain it. It was a road into vulnerability, because I talked about how I wanted to change my appearance in order to change my innermost being. But someone's got a picture of that somewhere. I've never been able to find one.
But please, if anyone is listening to this and has that picture, please hashtag tweet it, at Mockingbird NYC. Please do this today. Please, we beg you.
Well, it was my birthday this past week, and I always get lots of sort of embarrassing photos sent to me because my birthday is on 4/20, which means, not only Hitler's birthday, but everyone's, smoking a bowl for you, So it's I think I got a couple of ridiculous images from high school this year when I had really long sideburns, but no Frosted Tips. I'm hoping to suppress those as long as possible.
Well, yes, that is my prayer for you.
Anyway, moving on.
Yeah, this interesting piece, was it Wall Street Journal, about people
Wall Street Journal.
Are wedding crashing virtually, via social media. So people on the weekends, it's been a hard week where everybody's working for the weekend. So people are, having their coffee and stuff and looking at strangers' weddings. And people are setting up unique hashtags to enable people to do it. Have you guys ever crashed a wedding?
Can I just say, make a really moralist statement
Absolutely.
right now? Remember, when people, maybe not within our memory, but when we idealize the past, remember when people were just excited to have sex with each other when they got married? Remember when that was, the thing when you got married? You're we can finally sleep together, and it's okay, and, we can move in together. And now we're just, finding ways to keep it interesting, right?
Yeah, it is, it's a strange, I saw an article a year and a half ago that the big trend was the bridal party, the bridesmaids and the bride mooning the camera. This was
How weird was that?
Gotta keep it interesting. So
yeah, literally people showing their rear ends, in the wedding photographs. It's.
But Sarah, I think that we might have a virtual wedding crasher in our midst, and it's not.
I was a real wedding crasher. I've done it tons of times. I love crashing weddings. I used to play poker at this club in Philly called the Union League, and in the summers there were weddings there. And I if I had a rough hand or two and just needed to de-stress, I'd go crash a wedding. I've told people that I dated the bride in high school. I would talk about how moving the homily was, how close I felt to the bride's mother, and this is why this is a little emotion for you. I make up stories. I've danced with the bride. I love it. I think crashing weddings is one of the greatest things in the world to do.
Why? Because you catch people at such a high watermark, or it's this strange intimacy that you thrust yourself into, or is it the deception? What is it? All the above?
How does every fairy tale end? At least in the West, right?
With a wedding.
Right, and they lived happily ever after.
Oh, yeah.
Because I think we are not infinitely imaginative, like God is infinitely imaginative, but the most imaginative of us, Prince, whoever it is, still has finitude as their horizon of what they can conceive. And it's just hard to conceive of anything better, because if we take the Bible seriously, right, I mean, history ends in a wedding feast. So it does, not a bang or whimper, but a wedding feast. And you look at John, right, in John 1, you have this picture, of like Genesis 1, in the beginning was the Word was God. But I think, Jesus' first miracle in John is the wedding is the water to wine at the wedding. And I think it's almost like the parallel to Genesis 2. Like it's the second creation story in John. But
I heard a talk this past week. I forget who said it, but they were talking about how every Shakespeare play ends with a wedding.
That was
Sarah.
me. Yeah. Yeah.
But that was great.
It's
I
true.
thought that was so interesting. It was Mindy Kaling
yeah, it's Mindy
talking
Kaling.
about weddings.
Yeah, it's genius. Yeah, and I mean, yeah, it's beautiful. I read this and kept thinking about, like, because I love hashtags. Like, I'm not hating on hashtags; they're awesome, and I totally follow them, and I like to write them. But the hashtag I always look at when I'm like stalking strangers right now is newborn baby. Cause that's where I am in my life, right? I don't want to look at weddings. I just want to see like new babies. Like, so, maybe it says something about us, what we're looking at.
when we got married, Lindy like stormed down the aisle like quick, and she kissed me before the vows. I was like, babe, you gotta wait for that. So it was really, but so I love it. Our wedding was.
You can't blame her, Scott. You're irresistible.
I am sexual license incarnate. No, but I have such a fond memory of that day. I mean, like, it was wonderful, and we spent like no money. We weren't trying to be radically counterculture or anything. It wasn't our style, but it was amazing. And I think there is something like our lurking. It's interesting. Like in Genesis, Cain, after he's exiled, he builds a city, right? Because like the arc of creation, the garden's meant to be tended. So we go from a garden to a city. So even apart from the presence of God east of Eden, he still had to make a city. Like it's going to be a rough city that's animated by depravity and longing in the worst sense, rather than spirit-filled, gratitude for grace. But the same thing. I mean, I just think we cannot help like something about weddings moves us, and it's a beautiful thing. And I hope that we see Prince at the wedding supper of the Lamb. Maybe he'll be like the wedding singer.
Nice.
Which would be a beautiful thing.
Did you guys see, if you haven't gotten a chance to click on that video that I put in the Prince tribute of him and Michael Jackson and doing a tribute to James Brown, with James Brown there on stage right in the middle of the 80s. It's amazing, fantastic, and as I said, it is like a vision to me of heaven, because there's so much joy, and that would be. I don't know how heaven could surpass that, but we shall see.
They could let people on the other side crash the party.
Hey, Scott, before we go, thank you guys both for everything you did in New York. I think it was just
it's a blast.
We haven't actually talked as a threesome since then, but Sarah, I can't wait for everyone to hear your talk. And all the content should be available early next week. We're waiting on a couple of last little things, but the videos will be rolled out steadily. But does anyone want to share their top memory of New York? May I do that? May I put you on the spot?
Yes.
I think looking back, it was pretty incredible how Derek Webb played that song.
Yeah.
Played that Prince song, "I Would Die for You," because I hadn't really listened to the lyrics before. But
yeah, I mean, I thought
Scott,
I thought the whole conference was amazing. It was so accessible. I mean, I've been going to Mockingbird now for probably 5 years, and this was the most accessible conference I've been to. And my husband, who's been going to theological conferences now for 20 years, said this is the best one I've been to because they didn't create this unreality. Like they didn't have a really high anthropology. So I'm not going home to face some reality that they acted like didn't exist. Like I'm going home and I'm, facing my sin, facing the sin of my people, facing our need for redemption in the midst of it. But he said, I was so encouraged at the same time. So I would just say that actually, I think my husband's take on it is better than anything I could say.
Scott, it has to be for you, the Episco Disco. Am I wrong?
It is, and it's not. Well, yes, that was a high point. It changed, like my church. It changed. People, this is like legendary now. It's already become a legend. Like stuff usually has to have more shelf life than that, but it's like so surreal even thinking about it. But for me, the moment that at least most moving was I was interviewing your dad, the one and only PZ. As he was talking, I looked over at Ted Peters, who's one of our speakers, and his wife, and their eyes were closed, and they were leaning on each other. And your dad was talking about just woundedness and being born into the world to be delivered from it in a sense of brokenheartedness. And I looked at these two, and they were so in love, and everything he was saying was so true, and they knew it, not just like intellectually, but they were feeling it like in, the marrow of their bones. And so to see them hearing him like they were the only two people in the room was it was unique.
Wow.
Yeah, it was wedding. Again, you can't imagine anything better than something that points to nuptials.
Gosh, thanks for sharing that. I can announce that we do have the dates for the 10th anniversary.
Yay.
Which is next year in New York. We're going to do it a weekend later. It's going to be April the 27th, 28th, and 29th, 2017. April 27th, 28th, 29th. So mark your calendars. Try to get out of any obligations. We're going to be working hard to get all the information out there much earlier than we normally do. But that's the 10th anniversary bash, and there will be an encore.
Do not miss
disco.
it. Don't miss it.
Awesome.
I don't think we can get away with not doing one, given how talk about heavenly banquet. That was.
And it sounds like Mindy Collins going to be our keynote, from what I hear.
Yeah, we've got her, Stephen Colbert, her Colbert, and I think Anne Lamott. It's just yeah. Prince is doing the music.
It's going to be emceed by Anderson Cooper and Kathy Griffin.
Oh, please not.
Yeah, right.
Okay. Sorry. Thanks for letting me hijack.
It's quite
there,
all right,
Scott.
and I will talk to you all next week, if not before then. Thanks for listening to the Mockingcast. As always, any of the content you heard in the podcast can be accessed at our website, mbird.com. And if you liked what you heard, please stop by iTunes and give us a rating or a review. And this podcast is done to celebrate the story of the one who not only would but did die for us. So it's fitting to fade out with a tribute to an artist whose memory we will not soon forget. Have a great weekend.
Darling, if you want me to, I would die for you. Oh, you, I would die for you. Oh, darling, if you want me to, I would die for you. Prince, everyone.